Welcome to this tutorial where we take a look at how we can issue a W3C Verifiable Credential using OID4VCI V1 with the walt.id Issue 2 of the walt.id community stack. In the tutorial, we will do two things. First, we will do a standard issuance using an issuance profile provided by the issuer out of the box to get our first credential into a wallet quickly. In the second part, we will define our own custom W3C verifiable credential type with its own data attributes. Now, in order to go through this tutorial, we will also need a wallet. Now, I will be using the walt.id wallet API version 2 of the community stack, but you can use also any other OID4VCI compatible wallet. Now, before we kick things off, we need to get, first of all, our Issue 2 API from the walt.id community stack up and running. The Issue 2 as well as the Wallet 2 in the community stack are open source, meaning you can get them via our walt.id identity repository. I already cloned the repository into my local environment, so when we switch quickly here to my terminal, we can see now I'm already in the Docker Compose folder of this walt.id identity repository. The Docker Compose can be used to quickly bring up our whole stack in one command. It will bring up the issuer, the verifier, as well as the wallet. And so we will quickly do this now here. With this up and running, when we now switch back to my browser, we can now navigate to localhost 7005. And here we will find the Issue 2, which we will be mainly using to issue our credentials. We will also find our wallet, which is running on localhost 7006. Now, before we go to the issuer, we need to make sure we have a wallet with a key and a DID to then be able to claim the credential. So that's the first thing I will do. I will create a new wallet using the /wallet endpoint. I get an ID back, which I will store for later references. And then I will go ahead and first of all, generate myself a key into this wallet. So providing here the wallet ID I just got back. Now here we will be using the option backend JWK, which simply means that the key will be stored in the database of the wallet. For production, you can also use external KMS solutions to secure the keys of the wallet. So now we have our key ID and the key type. I will need to copy here my key ID, as we will also need this in a second. And then we will go to our DID create endpoint. Here I provide the key ID and I will provide my wallet ID. I will now create here a DID of the method key. So we can see here now my DID key, which has been created. Now, the DID and the key I created will become the default key and DID for my wallet, which means when we later call the credential receive endpoint, I don't need to specify that I want to use those exact key and DID, although I could also explicitly specify it. So now to the issuer. If we quickly go back here to our tutorial, we have our Issue 2 now up and running. We have created a test wallet. And so the first thing what we will do is check a pre-configured profile for an Open Badge Credential. So by default, when you clone the walt.id identity repository, there are certain configuration files that come with it. Like here, the issuer profiles configuration, as well as the credential issuer metadata configuration. Now, those two you will be mainly using, and these specify certain credentials which are available. So the issuer metadata is a way to advertise to the outside, for example, to wallets, which type of credentials the issuer supports. This is a standard OID4VCI endpoint that is then exposed on the issuer side, which can then be queried by wallets to get the information of the different types of credentials. The issuer profiles, or also in some sense templates, are in a sense predefined data structures for the issuer key, for the issuer DID, for the credential data that then goes into a credential of a specific type. So if we look quickly back here to our tutorial, we will be issuing an Open Badge Credential. And so what we will now do is first of all check, okay, does this profile actually exist? And we will get back here that it does exist. And so the profile has an ID and it binds to a credential configuration ID. Now this credential configuration ID is here in the issuer metadata. So when we quickly search here, we will find this credential configuration ID. So this credential type, Open Badge, is advertised to the outside as being issuable. And we now, with the profile, bind specific data attributes, like for example, a specific issuer key, an issuer DID, and credential data to this credential type. Next to this, we will also specify certain data functions, which are ways to basically get information just before the time the credential is signed into the credential. So for example, here we will get the subject DID from the wallet. So basically my DID key I generated earlier with this command right here. This will then be fetched from the wallet and inserted by the issuer into this field right here. So credential subject ID, which is the data field in the credential right here. So which is in this credential subject. So this here will then be filled with the actual subject DID. There are also data functions for creating timestamps, or there's also data functions for using webhooks, which basically means you can fetch before the credential is signed data from an external system if you wanted to. So there are various ways which you can also explore in our docs on how to basically populate the credential data into the credential that is then being issued. So now we know, okay, we have our Open Badge Credential profile, which ships by default with the walt.id identity repository configuration files. And so the next thing we will do is we will use this profile to then create an OID4VCI offer. Now I will copy here this body out and we will go here to the credential offers endpoint and I will paste it right here. So a credential offer requires the profile ID and the authentication method. So either using the pre-authorized code flow coming from the OID4VCI standard or the authorization code flow. Now we use here the pre-authorized code flow, assuming the user already authenticated and he can simply claim the credential using the offer we will now create. And now in addition to those two parameters, there's also the option to have so-called runtime overrides, which we will also later see when we do a custom credential, where we can now here specify specific attributes, credential data that overrides or extends the fields which are defined in this issuer profile. So if we go quickly back here to Open Badge, we have here our credential profile, which we also saw earlier in the API. And so we can now, with the runtime overrides, add additional fields, for example, to the credential subject, or override fields, like for example, the description directly in the call when we do our credential offer creation. But we now leave it simply as that for the time being and execute this. Now, what we get back is our credential offer. Now, this credential offer, depending on how it is delivered to the wallet, could be rendered out as a QR code, could be behind a link that then opens the wallet. But essentially, at the end, this offer will land somehow in the wallet. And the wallet will then further process it. And so we will now basically jump to the wallet directly. And using the APIs, we will receive the credential. And so we simply provide here the offer URL, which the wallet then uses to, first of all, gather information about the credentials being issued, as well as then claiming the credential from the issuer. And so here I provide my wallet ID again, and then we can execute this. And we can see, okay, I've now received the credential into the wallet with the specific ID. And when we take a look at this, can see here, I get I got the Open Badge Credential into my wallet. Now in the credential offer itself, so when we quickly would take this here, and we would do URL decoding, we see here the credential offer URI. And when we call this, we get the actual offer from the issuer. So here we will see, okay, this credential offer offers an Open Badge Credential to the wallet. Now here, there are also multiple ways. So this is a credential offer using a reference. So where the wallet needs to go to this URL to get the actual offer. There's also the option to provide it by value, so that the actual offer, like this, all this information is already present in this URL. Now, ideally, you use the shortened version just because then the QR code is also smaller and easier to scan. But there are multiple options that you can also configure in this end. Also, during this creation here of the offer, you can also specify certain webhooks or use server-side events to get then updates during the issuance process. So now that we've claimed our first credential, in the next step, we will define our own custom W3C Verifiable Credential type in the issuer metadata, as well as then a custom credential profile. And so first we will define the type to promote to the outside that this new type is available for wallets to claim in the issuer metadata. And this we need to provide in our configuration files, which are then mounted into the running issuer API 2 instance. And so I already did add those previously. So we have this new my credential chart added. And we also have the issuer profile for my credential, my custom credential added right here. Now, when you add this, you will need to restart the Docker Compose in order for it to pick up the changes in these configuration files. Comparably, when you use the walt.id enterprise stack, this is all persisted, so there is no need to restart the service. Now, back in our API, we will first of all check that our new credential profile is actually available. So we do quickly get here. And we see, okay, here's our new credential profile for our custom credential, which is called my credential. And so the next thing, we will create now an offer based off of this new credential profile. But this time, as I already mentioned earlier, we will use runtime overrides. So here, when we quickly take a look again at the profile itself, here in the credential data, we just have context, the type and credential subject with one field name. And what we will now do in the API, we will add to the credential subject 4 new fields: the attendee name, the ticket tier, the event, and an email. And this will be in addition to what is already defined here. We could also override the name specifically by also providing it here. And so when we now execute this, we get our offer again, we will go to our wallet, we will paste it here to receive it. We receive the credential, we get the ID out, and when we take a look at it in detail, we will see that we have now our new credential. And here in the credential data, we have next to the name, which was part of the original profile, our runtime overrides values for attendee name, ticket tier, event, and email. And with this, we reach the end of the tutorial. If you enjoy our tools, please leave us a star on GitHub. You can further explore the authorization code flow and other configuration options I mentioned in our documentation directly. There will also be a link to the written guide of this tutorial, so you can check it out directly in our docs. And with that, happy building and see you next time.